A very good morning and welcome to News at 10 on Rajya Sabha television, your one stop for the day's biggest developing stories. G20 summit in Germany is our top focus. Now counter-terrorism, economic growth, peace and stability is on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's agenda here. All the updates are from the G20 summit and much more in this bulletin, starting with the headlines. Prime Minister Modi in Germany to attend G20 summit, terrorism and climate change top agenda. Meeting also scheduled with BRICS leaders on the sidelines. CBI case against Lalu, his wife, sons and others. Case relates to awarding tenders for hotel maintenance in Ranchi and Puri as Railway Minister. Searches at 12 locations. Fresh tension in West Bengal's Basirhat, Section 144 imposed. BJP left Congress delegations to visit riot-hit areas in North 24 Parganas. Brilliant knock by Virat Kohli helps India seal a 3-1 series win against West Indies. Hosts defeated by 8 wickets in the last match at Kingston. And Rohan Bopanna advances to the second round at the Wimbledon. Pace bows out of the men's doubles event. Federer, Djokovic, Kerber and Radwanska advanced to round 3. Pliskova knocked out. Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in the German city of Hamburg to attend the G20 summit after wrapping up his historic 3-day visit to Israel. Now he will attend the summit hosted by Germany on 7th and 8th of July. The theme of the summit this year is shaping an interconnected world. On the sidelines of the summit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is to participate in a meeting of leaders of the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa grouping today. He is also set to hold bilateral meetings with some of the world leaders there. The G20, founded in 1999, comprises a mix of the world's largest and emerging economies, representing about 2/3 of the world's population, 85% of the global GDP and over 75% of the global trade.
We would expect that the G20 leaders, world leaders, would have substantial time and it would be a leaders retreat format. So leaders will have a free-flowing but a very intimate discussion on the subject. And broadly, this also aligns with the Prime Minister's own approach in his meetings with the world leaders, including G20 leaders, with the central thrust on countering terrorism.
And early on the last day of his Israel visit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Haifa. He paid homage to the Indian soldiers who sacrificed their lives during World War I for the liberation of the Haifa city. Here are all the details.
On the last day of his historic visit to Israel, Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid homage to the Indian soldiers who laid down their lives during World War I while protecting the Israeli city of Haifa. He also unveiled a plaque commemorating Dalpat Singh, known as a hero of Haifa, for the critical role he played in the liberation of the city. 44 Indian soldiers, part of the Allied forces, had sacrificed their lives in 1918, protecting Haifa from the Ottoman Turks during World War I. Later in the day, Prime Minister Modi and Netanyahu addressed the India-Israel CEOs Forum. Around 30 CEOs from the two countries participated. The forum set a target to increase bilateral trade from the current $5 billion to $20 billion within 5 years. The forum also set up 6 joint committees covering startups, pharma and life sciences, homeland security, agriculture, energy and water sectors. Prime Minister Modi also interacted with Indian students in Tel Aviv. Later, the two prime ministers took a stroll on the Olga beach in northern Israel. The two leaders waded barefoot into the sea. They also saw a demonstration of a mobile water desalination unit and drank water from it. Earlier, the two leaders attended a technology exhibition. Modi tweeted, "Some of the key focus areas of my Israel visit are startups and technology. Had the opportunity to visit an impressive technology exhibition." During the historic visit, India and Israel signed 7 important agreements on Wednesday after the conclusion of summit-level talks between the two leaders. They include 3 agreements on space technology, 2 on water, 1 on innovation and 1 on the Israeli Agency for International Development Cooperation. Terrorism, development cooperation and trade also dominated the talks between the two leaders. Akhilesh Suman's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
And right now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Hamburg, where at least 76 police officers were hurt in clashes with anti-G20 protesters. And this as a demonstration dubbed Welcome to Hell erupted in violence shortly after it began. The confrontation was reported even as the world leaders, including US President Donald Trump, arrived in the city ahead of the G20 summit. The theme chosen for this year's summit is shaping an interconnected world. However, there has never been a time where there was more dissent within the G20 leaders over several issues. Ahead of the G20 summit in Germany, clashes between police and protesters in Hamburg. 76 police officers and several protesters injured. The clashes started during Welcome to Hell March, which began about 2 miles from where the summit is to be held, attended by close to 12,000 people. Police fired water cannons and pepper spray at masked protesters, ordering many of them to remove their masks. Protesters responded by hurling bottles, stones and flares. While the march itself was cancelled, violence spread to other areas of the city. Violence continued during the night as well. At Rote Flora building, a pile of trash was set on fire. While the protesters were essentially anti-capitalist, there were protests against climate change and other pressing world issues that demonstrators say the G20 has failed to address.
Und den Faschismus produziert, besonders wie Trump, der so faschistoid auftritt und sagt, ich bin bereit, auch die Atombombe zu benutzen, und so einen Typen hier hinzuladen im Namen der sogenannten kapitalistischen Demokratie.
Meanwhile, the G20 leaders face their own disagreements, including over climate change and trade. During the 2-day meeting, world leaders, including US President Donald Trump, are also expected to discuss major issues like terrorism and migration. Trump has already met German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and the pair spent an hour talking about North Korea, the Middle East, the conflict in eastern Ukraine and G20 issues. The summit will also see Trump meeting Russian President Vladimir Putin for the first time.
Meine Damen und Herren, Deutschland hat ja in diesem Jahr die G20-Präsidentschaft inne, und wir freuen uns, die Regierungschefs aus den G20-Mitgliedstaaten und aus vielen regionalen Organisationen und auch den internationalen Organisationen hier in Hamburg begrüßen zu können.
The G20, founded in 1999, meets each year. It includes 19 countries and the European Union and accounts for approximately 80% of the global GDP. Some 20,000 police have been deployed in Hamburg for the summit. After the violent clashes on Thursday, extra security cordons have been erected to prevent protesters reaching the venues. Up to 1 lakh protesters are expected in Hamburg during Friday and Saturday. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And back home, the CBI today carried out searches at the premises of family members of former Railway Minister Lalu Prasad Yadav in connection with the fresh case of alleged irregularities in the awarding of a tender for maintenance of hotels. The case has been registered against the then Railway Minister, his wife Rabri Devi, Bihar Deputy Chief Minister and his son Tejaswi, the then IRCTC MD PK Goyal, the wife of Yadav's confidant Prem Chand Gupta, Sujata and others. Now, Gupta is a former Union Corporate Affairs Minister. The FIR relates to the allegations of irregularities in the tender for development, maintenance and operation of B&R hotels in Ranchi and Puri, awarded to the private Sujata hotels in 2006. The B&R hotels are heritage hotels of the railways, which were taken over by the IRCTC from the public transporter earlier in the same year. Searches are being conducted today at 12 locations, including in Delhi, Patna, Ranchi, Puri and Gurugram. Finance Minister Arun Jaitly on Thursday termed Jammu and Kashmir adopting GST as the financial integration of the entire nation. He was addressing a BJP event about GST in New Delhi. He said that GST will be profitable for even the non-manufacturing states like Jammu and Kashmir.
Finance Minister Arun Jaitly has termed the goods and services tax as the biggest economic reform post-independence. Addressing people at the Talkatore Stadium in New Delhi, he added that Prime Minister Modi not just got the bill approved in Parliament, but also got states and union territories to pass their laws, with Jammu and Kashmir being the latest to pass a resolution adopting GST on Wednesday.
इसका योग्य उस राज्य को मिलता है जिसमें अंत में जाकर सामान बिकता है। ये डेस्टिनेशन टैक्स है। जो अंतिम यात्रा उस सामान की होती है, उस राज्य को इसका लाभ मिलता है। जो पैदावार करता है उसको नहीं मिलता। अब पैदावार करने वाले कई राज्य थे, तो इन्होंने कहा कि भाई हमारा नुकसान जो होगा उसकी भरपूरी कैसे करोगे? सरकार इसकी कल्पना नहीं कर पाई।
Meanwhile, former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram has termed the GST in its current form imperfect with major flaws.
It is a mockery of GST. When we have rates like 0.25, 3, 5, 12, 18, 28 and 40, and possibly more because of the discretion vested with the state governments, how can we call this a one nation, one tax regime?
However, taking a dig at the Congress, Jaitly said the first move towards bringing this landmark law was made by the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government 17 years ago and not the Congress. Panchanan Mishra's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
The Supreme Court of India has the response of the Election Commission on the possibility of using electronic voting machines with the voter-verified paper audit trail or VVPATs in the Gujarat Assembly elections later this year. A bench of Chief Justice J.S. Kehar and Justice D.Y. Chandrachud said that it may direct the poll panel to use VVPATs with EVMs after it was informed that so far over 86,000 such machines have already been procured. The bench was also informed that over 70,000 EVMs with VVPAT machines would be required for the Gujarat polls. The apex court was hearing a plea filed by Gujarat Patidar leader seeking the use of either ballot paper or EVMs with VVPATs for the assembly election in the state. The petitioner had claimed that the EVMs were not fully reliable, foolproof and tamper-proof or hacker-proof. More news from across the nation in Nationwide. The Supreme Court is likely to pass an order today on whether or not Aadhaar card is mandatory for availing government social benefit schemes. Earlier in the month, the apex court pronounced its order on mandatory requirements of Aadhaar card for income tax return. The Income Tax Department has also stepped up its efforts to encourage people to link their PAN with Aadhaar. Naval ships, aircrafts and personnel from India, Japan and the United States will participate in the 10-day-long Malabar exercise beginning today. The exercise will feature both ashore and at-sea training in scope and complexity to address the variety of shared threats to maritime security in the Indo-Asia Pacific. India's aircraft carrier INS Vikramaditya, Japan's largest warship JS Izumo and supercarrier Nimitz of the United States will be part of the exercise. Air India has launched its first flight to Washington, D.C. from New Delhi. The move adds its fifth destination in the United States. The plane offers 8 seats in first class, 35 in business and 195 in economy class. The service to the U.S. capital will be offered 3 times a week. The Maharashtra government has expanded the ambit of its loan waiver scheme to include even those farmers who had taken loans after 2008. Earlier, the scheme titled Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Samman Yojana covered only those farmers who have loan outstanding between April 1st, 2012 and 30th of June 2016. Time for a very short break here. We'll be back with more news. Stay with us.
hydroelectric cell has been invented by us in India. It is internationally recognized, accepted, and it's a low cost, which is non-toxic. It does not use any of chemicals in it. Besides this, it's a portable, can be used anywhere, anytime, day, night.
Watch Eureka with Dr. R.K. Kotnala, Chief Scientist at National Physical Laboratory, Delhi, only on Rajya Sabha television.
And now an update on the IndoChina face-off in Assam, and China on Thursday reiterated its stand on road construction near Sikkim border, saying it was a legitimate and normal action as the road was being constructed on its own territory. Now, hardening its stance against India, China said that New Delhi had no right to object over the road construction in Dukhala area and that India must pull back troops for any peaceful talks to take place. Chinese Foreign Ministry also rejected India's security concerns in the region, saying that India's increased activity on the border area was rather a matter of concern for China's security. Remember, the ties between the two nations have been deteriorating ever since the Indian troops prevented the Chinese from construction in the area. On Thursday, Beijing made it clear that its President Xi Jinping will not have a bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Germany, saying that the atmosphere was not right for the meeting. Meanwhile, the Chinese army carried out exercising simulating real battle scenarios at high-altitude areas in Tibet. The PLA tested new equipments, including a light battle tank, besides conducting live firing exercises as well.
明白印方所谓的中国的修路行动给印方带来严重安全风险的依据是什么？中方在自己的领土上修路，这是主权国家的正当行为，合理。
The news from West Bengal, where fresh violence took place in Baduria, Basirhat and surrounding areas after relative calm on Thursday morning. Reports claim that police fired tear gas to control protesters blocking roads. Section 144 was imposed in riot-hit areas of North 24 Parganas district, with internet services remaining disrupted. BJP President Amit Shah formed a 3-member committee which would visit the riot-affected parts of the North 24 Parganas district and submit a report on the communal violence in the region. The opposition Congress and the Left Front delegation team will also visit the riot-hit areas today. Meanwhile, Governor K.N. Tripathi has said that all actions being taken on restoring normalcy in the region are on. He has also appealed for peace.
I want the peace should be restored, law and order should be restored, and I am happy that steps are being taken in that direction.
कोई समस्या है तो गृह मंत्रालय को, गृह मंत्री को बताना है, मगर पब्लिकली स्टेटमेंट देना और राज्यपाल जी का नाम लेकर अपमान करना अच्छा नहीं है। हम संघीय व्यवस्था में है और राज्यपाल का संविधान में एक महत्वपूर्ण स्थान दिया है, वो अपना काम करेंगे।
हमारे मुख्यमंत्री जी हमेशा बीजेपी को ये सब में दोषी ठहराने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। बड़ा अजीब लगता है कि ये बंगाल उनसे चलाया नहीं जा रहा है, तो वो क्यों ना वो मान ले। कभी गवर्नर पर गलत तरीके से बातें कर रही है।
The state government has been unable to control the situation. That is why it is necessary for the army to be deployed. First step should be to see that the violence is ended and peaceful life is restored. The situation is alarming because we have seen in West Bengal, because of the communal politics which is now prevailing, where both the Trinamool Congress and the BJP are creating polarization.
Let's now get you the weather update from across the country. And 3 more miners lost their lives in the current wave of floods in Assam, taking the toll to 24. Heavy showers and landslides also continued for the 4th consecutive day in Arunachal Pradesh. Meanwhile, light to moderate rain and thunder showers occurred at most places over the eastern areas and a few places in western Uttar Pradesh. Now, 24 people have died in Assam due to floods that have affected 4 lakh people across 15 districts of the state, and as many as 42,000 of them have been rendered homeless, taking a shelter in relief camps. The worst hit district is Karimganj, where over 2 lakh people have been affected by swirling waters, followed by Lakhimpur with 80,000 people affected. In neighbouring Arunachal Pradesh, over 10,000 people in Nagaon district have also been hit by flash floods. 300 people were rescued in Barpeta district after Beki River started inundating villages there. Meanwhile, most parts of Uttar Pradesh received rainfall since Wednesday, leading to rise in water level of the Ganga between Kannauj and Balia. Heavy to very heavy rains were recorded at isolated places in the state. Though rainfall has brought a much-needed respite from the heat, it has also led to land erosion of river banks and waterlogging in several areas, disrupting normal life in the state. On to some international news now. France has said that it would take measures to end the sales of diesel and petrol cars by 2040. Now, calling it a revolution, French Ecology Minister Nicolas Hulot said that the ban on fossil fuel vehicles was part of a renewed commitment to the Paris climate deal. Hulot said that the aim of the move was to make France carbon neutral by 2050, as well as cut the nuclear share of the country's power mix to 50% by 2025. He also said that poorer households would receive financial assistance to replace older and more polluting vehicles with cleaner ones. French President Emmanuel Macron and Hulot have said that they aim to ensure that France goes beyond the country's own commitments regarding the 2015 Paris Climate Change Agreement.
Nouvelle thématique, les voitures. C'est faire de la France le numéro 1 de l'économie verte, en faisant de l'accord de Paris une chance pour l'attractivité, l'innovation et l'emploi. Très important parce que j'espère que j'y parviendrai, mais
Microsoft has started cutting thousands of positions, mostly in its sales departments, days after announcing that it would shift its sales strategy to focus more on cloud services than on its traditional server and desktop businesses. Now, Microsoft has 71,000 employees in the United States and 1,21,000 employees around the world, suggesting that these cuts are relatively small compared to the size of its entire workforce. Microsoft said that the layoffs represent less than 10% of its sales staff, with 75% of the cuts affecting non-US based employees. Microsoft confirmed the layoffs but declined to comment directly on how many employees were impacted, only saying that the number will be in thousands. And what else is making news across the world? Let's find out in World Wrap. A 6.5 magnitude earthquake killed at least 2 people in the central Philippines on Thursday, with more than 5 people still trapped inside a collapsed commercial building. An 18-year-old woman died after being hit by falling debris in Ormoc City on Leyte Island, near the epicenter of the earthquake. Elsewhere, rescuers also pulled out 8 survivors and 1 body from a collapsed 3-story structure in the town of Kananga. At least 28 inmates were killed in a brutal prison fight on Thursday in the Mexican Pacific resort city of Acapulco, in one of the worst outbreaks of violence in the country's troubled penal system in recent years. The fight broke out between rival gangs in the maximum security wing of the prison. The prison carnage was particularly embarrassing to Mexico as it came the same day U.S. Department of Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly was visiting the state. French lawmakers voted for the 6th time to extend the country's state of emergency. This as Interior Ministry figures showed that security forces have thwarted more than 1 terror attack a month on an average this year. The newly elected parliament, dominated by MPs from centrist President Emmanuel Macron's new party, voted 137 in favour to 13 against to extend the state of emergency until November this year. That US-led coalition airstrikes have killed at least 224 civilians since the Syrian forces it backed entered Islamic State group Bastion Raqqa a month ago. But the coalition pushed back the reports, saying that its critics were not conducting detailed assessments. Arab and Kurdish fighters from the Syrian Democratic Forces broke into Raqqa on 6th of June after a month-long operation to encircle the northern city. On to some sports news. At the Wimbledon, it was a mixed day for India as Rohan Bopanna advanced to the second round, while Leander Paes bowed out of the men's doubles event. Now, Rohan Bopanna and his French partner, Roger Vasselin, defeated German pair of Dustin Brown and Misha Zverev in straight sets 6-3, 7-6, 6-4. However, Leander Paes and his Canadian partner Adil Shamsuddin lost a marathon first-round battle to Austrian Junior Knowles and Philippine Oswald. The Indo-Canadian pair lost 6-4, 6-4, 2-6, 6-7, 8-10. Meanwhile, in the men's singles, top seeds Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic breezed into the third round. Third seed Federer, who is seeking a record 8th title, beat Serbian Dusan Lajovic 7-6, 6-3, 6-2. While world number 2, Djokovic swept past Adam Pavlasek 6-2, 6-2, 6-1 in the second round encounter. 6th seed Milos Raonic, 8th seed Dominic Thiem and 10th seed Alexander Zverev also progressed to the third round. Meanwhile, in the women's singles, world number 1 Angelique Kerber went through to the third round after beating Kirsten Flipkens 7-5, 7-5 in a tough encounter. Polish 9th seed Agnieszka Radwanska and Russian 7th seed Svetlana Kuznetsova also progressed to the next round. However, 3rd seed Karolina Pliskova was ousted from the tournament. And in cricket, India defeated West Indies by 8 wickets in the 5th and the final ODI to clinch the 5-match series 3-1. Now, skipper Virat Kohli led from the front with a fluent century as India chased down the 206-run target with relative ease. Kohli remained unbeaten on 111, along with Dinesh Karthik, who was not out on 50 runs. Now, with his 28th ODI ton, the Indian skipper surpassed Indian batting legend Sachin Tendulkar for most hundreds in the 50-over format while chasing. Earlier electing to bat, the host made 205 for 9 in the stipulated 50 overs. Indian bowler Mohammad Shami bagged 4 wickets, while Umesh Yadav returned impressive figures of 3 wickets for 53 runs. That's all in this edition of news, but news and updates continue on Rajya Sabha television. Thanks so much for your time.